Imagine this. Hello, dear citizens of Earth. There are many rumors that I am in reality a reptilian being. Those rumors, of course, are totally true. And I apologize for all the trouble caused and hope you can forgive me. This is what happened in Korea in the year 2016. Not precisely that, but something of the very same magnitude. For years there were many rumors that the Korean president was a member of a shamanistic death cult, and that not the president, but actually 8 goddesses were ruling the country. Even US diplomats wrote that the cult had complete control over Park's body and soul. Crazy conspiracy talk, right? And then this happened.
We begin at the nation's top office. President Park Geun-hye has offered her deepest apologies to the Korean public regarding the latest scandal. It involves documents that she passed to her former aide Choi Soon-sil.
Now the scandal broke open last night when Korean TV station JTBC reported that the president's longtime aide Choi Soon-sil seemed to have received and edited some of the president's speeches before the events for which the speeches were designated.
저의 선거 운동이 국민들에게 어떻게 전달되는지에 대해 개인적인 의견이나 소감을 전달해주는 역할을 하였습니다.
For Americans, imagine if the State of the Union speech was actually written by a known death cult. But in Korea, it did not stop with speeches. That said cult was directly controlling the president. The cult has groomed the future presidents since her formative years. Now it was telling her what policies to enforce, how to write tax laws, and what charities should not be looked closer into. Even telling her what dress to wear and what handbag to carry. Through this president, it was the cult that was shaping Korea's present and future. But it did not end there. Hello and welcome to the Vital Red Pill. Today we are going for a very wild ride. Death cults, puppies, competitive horse dancing, and the 8 goddesses of South Korea. Disclaimer, I tried to fact check as much as I could, but it's a fucked up story that only gets worse the deeper I look into it. I often had to take breaks just because things were getting depressingly dark, even for me. And because it's an insane story the world had completely ignored. At least that part we shall change now. The story I'm going to tell you is generally like from a good Hollywood spy movie. Let's start from the very beginning. Park Geun-hye was born as one of 4 children of an ambitious Korean man who 11 years later became the 3rd president/military dictator of South Korea. As her parents were busy running the country and being the daughter of the president meant that she was not allowed to live a normal life. In 1974, her mother was killed during an assassination attempt on her father. It was in that time that the cult leader approached her, using his charms and persuasion techniques to slowly brainwash Park. The back then 22-year-old Park took over her mother's role of the First Lady in all official matters. For 5 years, she experienced political events from the front seat. During that time, the cult leader's daughter and the future president became good friends. Then, in 1979, 5 years later, Park's father was assassinated by his very own chief of intelligence. The head of the Korean CIA had shot the Korean president. I told you it's a crazy story. The following inquiries concluded even back then that the cult leader used his close ties to the president's family for great monetary gains. According to some sources, the assassin, who was a very good friend of the president, claimed that one of his motives for the assassination was that the president did not protect his daughter from the corrupting influence of the cult leader. So, in other words, the assassin feared that the cult could grow in importance and potentially take over Korean politics from within. From what we know now, he was entirely right. But his actions only postponed the inevitable. Park, who had now lost both parents due to assassinations, had nobody left protecting her from the cult's influence. The leader of the cult is often referred to as the Korean Rasputin, because same as the original Russian Rasputin, he uses his spiritual-fueled charisma to influence politics in his favor. The Korean Rasputin died age 82 in the year 1994. Only 4 years later, Park decided to go into politics, where she successfully rose in the ranks. The daughter of the cult leader was always at her side during these times as her spiritual advisor. In 2013, Park then became the first female Korean president, and, according to Forbes back then, the 11th most influential female in the world. But this is when the story gets dark, really dark. Not 1 year later, a ferry boat carrying hundreds of Korean students sank mere 2 miles from the coastline. Almost 300 students died that day. I remember having seen this in the German news back then. The whole event was very strange, as, according even to this YouTube comment, the whole crew acted irrationally. The captain constantly told the students to remain in their cabins. Everybody could have been saved easily, but almost 300 died. Later, it turned out that the captain was also a member of a shamanistic death cult, and the whole event was very likely a blood sacrifice ritual of sorts. The owner of the ferry company also committed suicide in the most obscure way during that day. And while the ship was sinking and the main headline news of all Korean media, the president was nowhere to be found, because she was having a meeting with the cult leader's daughter behind closed doors.
Shifting focus, prosecutors investigating former President Park Geun-hye's infamous missing 7 hours during the 2014 Sewol Ferry sinking have found that she waited to get advice from her close confidant before holding the first emergency meeting on the disaster. Our Kim Hyo-sun with the latest.
It's been found that former President Park Geun-hye consulted with her confidant Choi Soon-sil on how to deal with the sinking of the Sewol Ferry in April 2014. Prosecutors striving to solve the so-called 7-hour mystery about what Park did while the ferry sank in waters off the nation's southwest coast have found that Choi was called into the presidential office and held a meeting with Park as well as her close aides. The investigation also shows Park only left for the Central Disaster and Safety Countermeasures headquarters after Choi suggested she did so. She arrived at the headquarters at around 5 p.m., some 7 hours after the golden time for a rescue operation.
Rumors go so far as to claim that the whole sacrifice was done in order to resurrect most likely the now dead cult leader, as the memorial speech President Park gave after the ferry accident contains the words reborn and noble sacrifice. Keep in mind that the speeches were not written by her but by the cult leader's daughter. But there are way more occult things happening in Korea. An ex-president threw himself off an old cliff. According to the official story, his death note was found written on a computer in a document file where he asked that his body should be cremated as soon as possible and that no autopsy should be performed. That sounds more than fishy. Later, that same president is transformed from a corrupt politician into a saint with the help of the media for political reasons. Also related are recent news where a Korean cult purposely helped to spread the coronavirus by letting infected Koreans avoid quarantine and thus enabling them to spread the virus to as many people as possible, or something like that. The fuck is happening in Korea? When the news broke that the president admitted being a puppet of the cult, first thousands, then hundred thousands, and finally millions of Koreans went to the streets, peacefully. But have you ever heard of that? This event was ignored by almost all media worldwide. Those agencies that reported on it mostly only mentioned that some Koreans are protesting some corrupt president, yada yada, nothing new here. The fact that the leader of one of the world's top 20 countries, the Forbes #1 most influential woman in the world, was literally a Manchurian candidate cult puppet got no media attention at all. Why? Because during these times, these were the main headlines worldwide.
They control what you hear and what you don't hear. What is covered, how it's covered, even if it's covered at all. Sometimes I'll have like these great events and it won't be covered.
While the whole world was looking at the Hillary versus Trump show,
because you'd be in jail.
Korea impeached its presidential puppet and sentenced her to 25 years in prison. Luckily, some Korean guys on the chance documented those crazy happenings at the time, and it was this very screen cap that has led me to create this video you see now. But what about puppies and horse riders? As you would have guessed by now, naturally, it was these two elements that started the whole downfall of the cult. Because, obviously, this story was not weird enough yet. So, the cult leader's daughter was friends with a wealthy fashion designer. He was her 20-year younger toy boy. This fashion designer's expensive luxury handbags one day appeared in the hands of President Park. A great marketing success for his brand. But then one day the cult leader's daughter asked him to take care of her puppy dog for a while. When she came back a short while later, the fashion guy was out playing golf and left the puppy unattended for a few hours. This sparked an outrage in the cult leader's daughter that surely lasted many minutes and was very loud and ugly and so on. Her overreaction and the fact that, quote, she treated me like a slave, swearing at me many times, end quote, then caused him to look closer into this cult lady's actions. He wanted to retaliate against her, so he started to gather data, look at who she and her associates were in contact with. Real detective work. He wanted to hit her where it hurts. She grew up in a wealthy environment, and being the daughter of the cult leader gave her a lot of power. And that's why she behaved as if she was the queen of the whole country. She forced a prestigious university to create a scholarship for competitive horse dancing. Of course, her daughter was the first recipient of that scholarship, even though she wasn't even good at it. Nobody dared to stand in the way of the cult. And I guess many have heard rumors of what happened when one does. Maybe Korea's record-high suicide numbers are partly influenced by this cult, as many powerful people end up suiciding in forests or jump off old cliffs, and the police has learned to rather declare their suicide than to look into it. Anyhow, the young horse rider won some competitions because she was the only one attending, or in other events where she did not win, the organizers lost their jobs shortly after. Literary fairy tale-like spoiled princess behavior. The cult also uses influence to make sure that the same young lady could take part in a type of Asian Olympic Games. She supposedly won gold in those games. Medals that she was allowed to bring to the admission interview of one of the Korea's best universities, even though boosting one's score with this type of non-academic successes is strictly against that university's policy. The young lady later did not attend many classes, but still passed with good grades. And when a fashion class assignment asked for a drawing of a complete set of dresses, she only turned in a picture of her wearing some expensive brand clothes. Naturally, she got an A for that. Then one professor dared to say that she would not pass class if she kept on missing so many lectures. But a few days later, the same professor quit his job and ran away to the United States as quickly as possible. Problem solved, cult style. She even one day got kicked out of the university, but managed to appeal the expulsion by producing an official letter from the Korean Racing Association. This highly arrogant behavior did not go unnoticed by her fellow students, as these fellow students started a protest, the first in the university's history, accusing the university of giving that lady unfair advantages. I guess because many of the students had wealthy parents, this protest could not be easily silenced by the cult. That protest then caused quite a stir, even forcing the head of the university to step down. As a reaction to these events, both cult mother and daughter fled to Germany, where she's suspected of owning $1 billion worth of property under different names. They wanted to wait until the whole thing cooled off and had left the headlines. Planned or not, this was the exact moment the fashion guy received news that a critical tablet computer was found. A tablet that contained undeniable evidence that the cult was influencing the president. The man who got screamed at for leaving a puppy alone for a few hours finally got his opportunity. He released the tablet's data to the public. The cult leader's daughter was too far away from the president to command her what to do. Or maybe she was just too busy planning revenge actions against those students who ultimately got her daughter expelled from university. Either way, only a few days later, President Park held a press conference, admitting to the rumors and asking for forgiveness. And the rest is history. My very own spin on what happened back then is at the very end of the video. But here's the positive spin to the whole event. According to many sources, evil cults are active in all countries all over the world. They have infiltrated many positions of high power everywhere. Marc Dutroux and Mr. Epstein are indicators of what is really happening behind closed doors worldwide. The only difference of Korea to, let's say, Germany would be that Koreans managed to unveil their president to reveal her true nature. and all that already in the year 2016. In other countries, the cults have stronger control over the press and the public narrative, especially since what happened in Korea. They are better at hiding their mistakes, so to speak. We truly are living in the apocalypse. Apocalypse in Greek means revelations, meaning that all that is hidden will be revealed, that all that hides in the darkest of shadows will be illuminated. How ironic. Now, let's begin with the texts. Written by a Korean anon in the year 2016. Being a Korean, since about 2 to 3 years ago, there was an ancient alien steer rumor that President Park is indoctrinated and being controlled by a handful of secret society called the G0ddesses. They're ruling Korea from behind. Everyone laughed at this crude joke humor. Suddenly, a week ago, a whistleblower confirmed this shit was real. The 8 powerful Korean billionaire women formed a secret society that ruled Korea from behind the veil. Whistleblowers stole PC and tablets from them, opened the media, confirming they did it all. They made decisions, from Park's text of speeches, reforming taxes by their own, maintaining national treasury, deciding every diplomatic move from toe to toe, assigning secretaries and ministers by their own. Only one member of the G0ddesses identity confirmed, its former psychic woman named Choi Soon-sil. According to the leak, she indoctrinated President Park since the age of 23. Yes, a psychic woman who's member of a secret society indoctrinated the president. I am not joking. They feel when everyone didn't believe this enemy plot tier batshit insane absurd news. Seriously, who is gonna believe this? Then, suddenly, President Park made news conference yesterday. She confirmed this leak is real and asked for forgiveness. They feel when the country's president is confirming that she's been indoctrinated by a secret society at a news conference. Everyone panicked. People started to get their shits together, gathering information about them. After digging, it's confirmed that shitloads of men are in jail right now for leaking the truth about the G0ddesses. Politicians who are in jail right now mentioned Choi and the G0ddesses right before they went to jail. People found photos of Choi escorting Park since the age of early 20s. Diggings found US ambassador report documents. It's saying Choi Tae-me, Choi Soon-il's father, is in full control of Park's body and soul. Choi Soon-sil's whereabouts is mystery. She is somewhere in Germany. They feel when politicians and whistleblowers tried to warn us about them years ago, but we didn't listen. The whole country is panicking like shit and the government lost its ability. They feel when it's just the beginning. They feel when there's more leaks to come. They feel when this is reality. They feel when every single TV channel in Korea talking about this. They feel when politicians preparing impeachment. They feel when this ain't enemy plot. Is this real life? Is this just fantasy? Google Choi Soon-sil. I ain't even joking. I had enough. Newspaper article. It's actually a system where Choi Soon-sil tells the president what to do. Former Mir Foundation official says power broker Choi received detailed presidential report almost daily and led meetings on governance. Behind the scenes, power broker Choi Soon-sil received and reviewed 30 centimeters thick, that's like 1 feet for you Americans, presidential report packets from the Blue House on a nearly daily basis until as nearly as this spring, a witness recently claimed. Another headline reads, Troubling revelations about Seoul's... fucking shit. Troubling revelations about Seoul's shadow president. The Korea Herald columnist. South Korean President Park Geun-hye releases a statement of apology to the public during a news conference at the presidential Blue House in Seoul. Photo, Reuters. Another headline, Swirling scandal involves shamanistic cult threatens South Korean president. And the ties are interesting indeed. Choi Soon-sil is the daughter of a man the president considered her mentor, Choi Tae-min. He claimed to be a pastor from a tiny pseudo-Christian sect, but a leaked diplomatic cable from the US embassy describes him as a Rasputin-like character, and his church is described by the Korean media as a shamanistic cult. So, Mr. Choi was the founder of an obscure sect called the Church of Eternal Life. The rabbit hole goes way deeper. Now we go to Wikipedia. The article is about the president of South Korea from 2003 to 2008. Death. The former president of South Korea, Mr. Roh, was found seriously injured at the morning of the 23rd May 2009 after apparently jumping from a 45-meter, 150 feet, cliff known as the Byong Wall, literally Owl's Rock, behind his rural home in his home village of Bogna. He sustained serious head injuries and was sent by a car, not by ambulance, to Sejong Hospital nearly at 7:20 a.m. and moved to Busan University Hospital at around 8:15 a.m. and was pronounced dead at around 9:30 a.m. According to the police, Mr. Roh left a suicide note on his computer apologizing for making too many people suffer and requested that his body be cremated. Wake me up inside.png. The text reads, I am in debt to so many people. I have caused too great a burden to be placed upon them. I can begin to fathom the countless agonies down the road. The rest of my life would be only a burden for others. I am unable to do anything because of poor health. I can't read. I can't write. Do not be sad. Isn't life and death all a part of nature? Do not be sorry. Do not feel resentment towards anyone. It is fate. Cremate me, and leave only a small tombstone near home. I've thought of this for a long time. What the fuck? The 10th president, Mr. Lee, stated that the news was truly unbelievable and deeply saddening. Justice Minister Kim said that the corruption case against him, so the former president, would be formally closed. However, he did not say whether the former president's family would continue to be investigated. The former president Mr. Roh's suicide followed the suicides of a number of high-profile figures under corruption investigations in Korea in recent years, including the former Secretary of Prime Minister Kim Yong-chul, former Busan Mayor Mr. Ang, who committed suicide while in prison, Park Tae-yang, former governor of Jeolla Province, and Chung Mong-hun, a former Hyundai executive. Roh himself had been sued by the former Daewoo ENC head Nam Sang-guk for allegedly making defamatory comments that drove her husband to throw himself off a bridge. Mr. Roh's suicide was followed later in the year by the suicide of another politician, the mayor of Yangsan, who was being subject to a corruption investigation. By May 27, Roh's bodyguard revealed that he was not with the former president when he committed suicide. The text further reads, Roh's suicides resulted in sudden positive shift in domestic perception towards the late president, leading one critical professor to comment, how could he become an instant saint upon his suicide? Perceptions of an excessive investigation on Roh's alleged improprieties boosted support for the opposition party. The party itself formed when then Roh's unpopularity made it a liability to be associated with him, giving them enough leverage to demand that President Lee apologize for the politically motivated investigation they claimed caused Roh's death and discipline those responsible. Support for the opposition party increased to 28.3%, outpolling the running GNP party at 23.5%. The Democratic Party also decided to block the scheduled opening of the National Assembly until the Lee government accepted responsibility for Roh's suicide. The chief prosecutor in Roh's bribery case also resigned. A year after Roh died, his autobiography was published by his personal and political fellows, based on Roh's previous books, unpublished draft, notes, letters, and interviews. It follows Roh's life from birth to death. A Korean anon says, if you'd like to know, the country is in shock right now. The president has lost all power and Congress has formed an emergency cabinet between the major parties to handle things while the constitutional crisis gets sorted out. She is beyond redemption now, because not only has she been caught handling national secrets to a civilian without security clearance and exhorting corporations illegally to pay her friends, She has been outed as a puppet for this weird religious cult. This is serious, because same as Little America, we have our own versions of religious nutters. A significant portion of the ultra-conservative right considers being Christian an absolute necessity for being eligible for office, and treat atheists like animals, much like Amerifat teabaggers. They vote for conservatives en masse every election because they think every liberal is a Marxist devil-spawn hell-bent on enforcing satanic rule upon the land. Now that Park has been outed as a demonic cult worshipper, even her devout ultra-conservatives abandoned her. Her approval rating sits at below 10. It's over. Another Korean anon jumps in. To answer people's questions, yes, this is a major happening. People are just too quiet because they're trying to get all the facts together before we get to pitchforks and molotovs. Personally, I'm afraid and excited because it will put the integrity of our democratic system to the test. And it's always fun to see the oligarchy squirm. I don't think North Korea or Russia or America has had any part in this. Oh, I read today's news that America was aware of our president's strange behavior for quite a while, but chose not to make a fuss out of it. At least there isn't any evidence of outside involvement yet. Feminism is big in Korea, and it's the disgusting SJW kind too. But I kinda understand their anger, because women really take it up the ass when it comes to employment. It's very common for promising female workers to get thrown out after their pregnancy break, because workers' rights suck in Korea if you don't work for the top 10 multinational corporations or the government. Thankfully, we're extremely red-pilled on the racial aspect of SJWism, and we hate brownies or mainland Chinese even more than the Japs do. President Park wrote a girl power sentiment into power, but it probably won't hurt the feminist movement, since her total sucking at the job forced many young SJWs to disown her as a feminist figure long time ago. Another Korean anon jumps in. Meanwhile in Korea, video game officially declared as a disease and put on ICD disease code by the government. Mandatory government cure program for those who infected by video game. 70% of elite Korean video game companies sold to China by M&A in just last 1 year. NCSoft's largest stockholder is the Korean government since last January. The female president and the current ruling party leaders insist that we have to import 13 million Chinese workers to solve the population decrease problem in Korea. The Ministry of Women talking about nationalizing the whole gaming industry within the next 3 years and promise more regulations and censorship. Endless, obnoxious neo-feminism propaganda pieces and anti-video game articles from every mass media on a daily basis. The female leader insisting on "my children" narrative every day, while she cut the whole child welfare budget by over 30% and charged it to fund the state. Over 5,000 people arresting for owning a piece of hentai every year, and they are put into the child offender sex list for 20 years, prohibited from getting any job for 10 years, and plus electronic anklets. Over 20% of those arrested for owning hentai are actually kids. They feel when the government is ruining kids' life because they watched hentai online. They feel when kids will have to live as a child offender for the next 20 years and will be jobless for 10 years for a piece of hentai or a yaoi novel. They feel when people in this country are actually defending, supporting and advocating this law. They feel when UN's current leader is Korean and he wants to implant this law in Japan. They feel when rumors telling that they want to implant chemical castration on hentai criminals in future. I've had enough. Somebody, can you please come here? Shit. Somebody, can you please come here in Korea and kill me brutally? Another Korean anon in the year 2015 had written, "I've got a story for you. South Korea government has an official Ministry of Women. Yes, Ministry of Women, run by a full of hypocritical paid radical feminists. And there's more. You know what they do? Government Commission Ministry of Women, MOW, make and decide whatever law about subculture, especially video game. So, this ministry did nothing about the actual feminism or women's right, but they only make shitty regulation, censorship, and copyright laws. Where to begin? God damn. South Korea became a living SJW paradise and eternal shithole of all gamers. They started with the internet real name system in 2001. The law is basically you need to register and enter your social security number in every website on the internet. Your name, birth date, address will automatically be sent to the website's owner. You think this is horrible? This was just the beginning. A foundation stone to Korean internet's Big Brother system. First, they started to broadcast shit tons of anti-gaming commercials and propaganda in media since the dawn of 2000. See the video I embedded. Then they ignited the first light with Shutdown Law in 2011, aka Cinderella Law. Basically, illegalize all the video game playing by minors from midnight to 9 AM. Your MMO clients will automatically shut down, and cops will raid internet cafes to arrest illegal video gaming. Yes, I'm not exaggerating or bluffing, it really is. After they conquered every MMO game and internet cafe, they invaded the home console area, such as PlayStation and Xbox. They pressured Microsoft and Sony to allow their rule, but they don't want to create a new code for the Korean government. So, Microsoft blocked every Xbox Live registration by age under 19 by social security number checking, and Sony simply shut down their PSN service for Korea. Sony officially only temporarily put out their service out of Korea. PlayStation Network registration came back in 2013, but now they require your social security number. If you created your PlayStation Network account before the year 2011, you're fucked. You can't play your video games anymore. Your account is crippled and you won't be able to play your game again. An American anon remarks, their main goal is to turn men into women. Another anon asks, what is known about the 8 Goddesses group? Any ideas as to their beliefs or goals? Another anon shows the names of all the 8 goddesses. Choi Sun-sil, the one psychic lady from the top. One lady of the Hyundai group, not Hyundai car. The one lady of the CG group. One lady, wife of the Deputy Minister of Culture, Sports and Tourism. Another lady is the wife of the Hwanhwa group owner. Another lady is a wife of an industrial bank owner. Another lady is the wife of a famous lawyer. And the last lady is a governor of the Korean Red Cross. Note, the following post was only written a few months before the president admitted to being the cult puppet. Korean anon here. The Daughters of Magalia cult shit is getting interesting pretty fast. Megalians are Korean extremist gender war terrorist group / cult that focuses on vandalizing and harassing males. And they push planned abortion campaigns on every impregnated male child / fetus. Their website is full with hundreds of pictures of dead, amputated or aborted dead boy fetuses of theirs. They insist full genocide gender war against all Korean males, and insist people to abort, kill male children to eliminate all future males in society. Some time ago, they picked a terror target and started smear harass campaign against some Korean webtoon artist named Mind-C, because this artist has a negative opinion against the recent Korean plastic surgery fad. He said plastic surgery fad around young Korean girls is a crime against human dignity and hurts our soul and body. They branded him as a mythologist and spammed his phone with thousands of snuff pictures and videos, vandalized his house and threatened to kidnap and kill his family. Nice people. The artist Mind-C sued them, big time. They made huge trouble and need money for their trial and lawyer. They started to sell t-shirts on their website to appropriate the cost of the lawsuit. Some dumb fuck female voice actor who worked for Nexon bought the t-shirts and declared fully support of Magalians on Twitter. Nexon terminated contact with her legally. They even fully paid her. Then the shitstorm began. They started a boycott campaign against Nexon and pretended that this whole event is some kind of misogynist patriarchy incident and oppression against all females and free speech. They fully distorted the facts and made a social network propaganda campaign 24/7, enforcing the narrative. They fired her because she's a feminist. She got fired because she wanted feminism t-shirts. Gas the shit lots. Start gender war now. Get an abortion if your fetus is a boy. This fucking retarded tactics worked so wonderfully that a shitload of Korean public figures started to declare support for this /BRAP/meets feminism batshit insane ISIS organization. Over 30 webtoon artists, countless authors, voice actors, journalists, daughters of politicians coming out as Magalian and started demanding gender war and violence against all Korean males, just like recent US cop shootings. And the media praises them as brave, heroic sisters. The whole fucking nation is divided. Literally every Korean internet community, forum, board are now a battlefield between Magalians and rational people. Normal people are panicking, overwhelmed by their fanaticism and insanity. I've seen some shit in my life, and being an anon for 10 years. But the Magalians, they're on a fucking whole different level. Misandry and woman supremacy at core. When they are pregnant with a boy, they call it the Korean man parasite maggot, and extremely proudly about it, they get rid of it and upload pictures of dead fetuses proudly. They call the Korean War the biggest barbecue party ever, because so many male Korean soldiers died there. They usually often conspire to rape or murder men or boys online. Their website is full of snuff video rape murder, men and CP videos, raping boys. They were the ones who incited the Gangnam protest I mentioned before and lynched, sexually harassed countless passing by men in the streets. Gangnam, known from the Gangnam Style video, is one of the richest parts of Seoul. Now half of the society seems to support them. People are panicking. My grandma fainted because she saw the thousands of used sanitary pads in the street walls. Huh? The fuck? My grandma fainted because she saw the thousands of used sanitary pads in the street walls put by Magalians and curse words written on by them. Today she came to my house and cried for 10 minutes. This happened last Third. Korea's biggest webtoon company, Lesin Comics, declared support for the daughter of the Magalia, and shit tons of rational people, anti-Magalians employees, left the company. They say majority of us higher-ups are fanatic Magalian revolutionists and want violent gender wars. The third biggest political party in Korea made a statement that blames Nexon and demands Magalia to be declared as free speech. This is the fucking end of days, cultural apocalypse and Ragnarok. This is your future when you ignore these fanatic culture warriors. I have absolutely no idea what will happen next, or even tomorrow. The madness is breaking out like a contagious disease right now, and we are on the verge of true violent gender war. Germany? Sweden? They are a fucking joke compared to us. The intensity madness scale here is beyond foobar. Tomorrow is Monday. My body is trembling with fear, anger, agony. What would happen next? I don't know. Spread this and fucking pray for us. This is gonna be a wild ride. I have no energy left to even turn my PC on and send an email. I'm writing this with my own tablet. I'm refusing to go to work for a month, and today I cried while listening Bridge over Troubled Water for 7 hours. Fucking total mental breakdown. What have we become? All I wanted was just playing video. The English Wikipedia entries at least confirm the claims of the Korean Anon against the Magalina cult, as well as WOMAD. Maybe some Korean Anon can help out and provide more sources here. The true extent, though, is hard to measure. The Korean Anon seemed very affected by the news, while other Koreans unfortunately regard it as only as just some type of typical feminist thing. No big deal. So, maybe take that part with a grain of salt. Note, the Magalia website itself was shut down in the year 2017. WOMAD, though, is still up and running. Note, the following post was only written a few months before the president admitted to being the cult puppet. A few days later, the same Korean Anon wrote, "You remember my report of Korean batshit crazy insane woman supremacy terrorist feminist group called Daughters of Magalia, right? I said the third biggest political party in Korea, Justice Party, officially declared their full support of the Magalians. It was first reported by the Huffington Post Korea, and since then hundreds of members are leaving the party like rats abandoning a sinking ship. The Huffington Post criticized them too, calling them traitors. Huffington Post Korea were known for fanatic Magalian supporting articles. This is not something surprising. But a whistleblower just revealed the shocking truth that this article was written by a husband of the Justice Party Executive Committee member. So a party member wrote a very article for the Huffington Post that was supporting Magalians and criticizing leaving party members. People started to dig shit. It turns out shitloads of high-ranked members of Justice Party and their relatives are working for the Huffington Post and vice versa. Whistleblowers claim that majority of party members were against Magalians, but the executive committee of the party, when interviewed by the Huffington Post, said that the party fully supports Magalians without any proper evidence, nor was there any conference or summit held, and even the very Huffington Post article was written by them. And afterwards, the article about criticizing leaving members were also written by the executive committee. Former members are saying that the upper ranks are already compromised to Magalians, and the whole party is slowly turning into a political hand designated to work for the Magalians and their twisted ideology. The Huffington Post also owns Korea's 8th biggest newspaper company. Han is also making Magalian support articles since the beginning of DOM. Fucking insane nepotism and cultist shit. People are panicking because the Magalians are infiltrating a political party of Korea and invading it from the inside and occupying it like some kind of Illuminati or Scientology plan. Am I watching the movie plot for Winter Soldier? Information from former members as well as news articles claim that only the floor leader of the party, Ro Ho-chan, is the only one opposing the growing influence inside the party and is fighting alone. People on the internet gave him the nickname Nick Fury. So, I am halfway through editing this video, only adding some pictures here and there while listening to this part. I wanted to see who is this so-called Nick Fury character. So, lo and behold, he died in 2018 by jumping off a tall building. According to official reports, he jumped because of corruption accusations that he had taken bribes equivalent to $33,000. The fuck, man, every element of this story is filled with death and suicides. The other day I was looking for some pictures and found a story from 2016 that over 1,000 bodies were buried on cult property. Most of the links of that story were already dead, but I found some. More on that at the end of the video. But what the fuck, man, I feel like all these dead people are helping me to find these small obscure articles. I do my part by shining the light on all these cases. Batshit insane feminist SJW cabal called with sci-fi name and logo infiltrating Korean politics, media, subculture, and preparing violent gender civil war and genocide of all men through abortion. This is beyond Paul tier. This is some kind of Hollywood movie or anime plot. I can't describe in words my feelings right now. A fucking feminist Scientology cult is dominating Korea from its inside and prepping chaos of society and violent gender civil war. The employers of Nexon also reported that there are spies of Magalians inside the company, as well as sabotage from the inside as well. This is the whistleblower's article of the party's website. It's saying the articles in the Huffington Post were written by the husband of member of executive committee. Her name is Leah Rom. Then there's the link. Somebody please report this to Breitbart or something. Oh, I think they might not believe this unbelievable shit. I myself cannot believe this shit. Is this real life? Is this just fantasy? Or maybe it's just Zionist globalist false flag operations? How deep does the rabbit hole go? Too long, didn't read. Magalian cult infiltrated Korea's first biggest political party and the Huffington Post. And the fucking newspaper companies all hail Magalia everywhere. Hey, editing me again here. So after just having read about Korean Nick Fury's death, I wanted to take a short break and open a fun website to get my mind off this heavy topic. And I kid you not, this was the very first picture there. The synchronicities are off the charts again. On the next day, the same Korean Anon wrote, the daughter of Magalia Shed wrote the right of mainstream media. The prosecutor authorities began a search and seizure operation in the Magalian headquarters building. SJWs went full damage control. Countless celebrities, politicians, artists, commentators, all kinds of shitheads declared, "I'm Megalian too," and saying this is oppression against feminism and women. The whole country is divided. The chaos scale is hell of a bigger than Gamergate. It's nationwide Gamergate. All TV channels broadcasting Megalian shit now. Half of channels pick a side with Megalians, saying Megalians are feminist heroes and anyone who opposes them are misogynists. The other channels are saying Megalians are nothing but batshit insane cultists. They are fucking beating each other brutally. We are nuclear, we are wild, we are breaking up inside. A newspaper article reads, Choi's involvement in the establishment of the Mia Foundation and K-Sports Foundation, funded by large contributions from Federation of Korean Industry members, is now being investigated, as are her close associatives, including Cha Eun-kun, a well-known music and commercial film producer, whose phenomenal rise to power in the cultural sector has been credited to his relationship with Choi. Park administration gave prominence to culture and its enrichment. The President's Committee for Cultural Enrichment was inaugurated and a monthly Culture Day was instituted, a day when admissions to cultural events and museums were offered for free or at discounts. Yet the administration that placed much great emphasis on culture also wreaked havoc on the Cultural Ministry, the government body that should have spearheaded cultural policies. The administration did not hesitate to pressure Culture Ministry officials to do its bidding, going so far as to remove officials who refused to toe its line. It is under this administration that a blacklist of nearly 10,000 cultural figures classified as being critical of the government has surfaced, despite Culture Minister Cho Yeon-sun's disavowal of the existence of such a list. An anon says, "This shit is confirmed." He writes headlines followed by links of news articles. Choigate scandal snowballing. Investigation into Choi Soon-sil gate widening. Faulting term limit. South Korean leader proposes revising constitution. South Korea's leader acknowledges ties to women in scandal. Key suspects still at large in Choi Soon-sil's probe. President Park apology doesn't jive with previous explanation of Choi Soon-sil scandal. It's actually a system where Choi Soon-sil tells the president what to do. Was Choi Soon-sil behind the closing of the Kaesong industrial complex? Pseudo-Christians shamanistic cult alleged to have influence over President Park. Rogue president election, still the politics of the vortex. Following this are 3 posts by the same Korean anon, but we shall skip these because they contain only little new information. And finally there's a news article. The strange saga of now-dead billionaire South Korean ferry owner Yo Byung-un, the article reads. The fugitive and alleged owner of the South Korean ferry that sank in April 2014 and killed hundreds of children aboard was as mysterious in death as he was in life. Before billionaire tycoon Bo Young-un founded the website God.com, led a church critics considered a cult, was once jailed for fraud, but only recently became internationally known for the focus of the largest manhunt in South Korean history. In 1987, 32 members of a group linked to the church committed suicide and were found bound and gagged at the Sewol factory. Yo was investigated but cleared of all suspicion. The suicide victims were not members of Mr. Yo's church, Knight claimed. No numerous media reports said otherwise. Now, South Korean authorities say Yo is dead. So far we haven't found any sign he was murdered, a police chief said according to the New York Times. Update from 2020. According to official reports, the ferry company's owner's body was found in a field 2 months after he went missing. The body was already heavily decomposed, so finding the real cause of death was nearly impossible. A DNA sample was taken and showed a hit compared to his still living brother, but according to Korean Wikipedia there are rumors that the dead body was in fact a local homeless man. So who knows whatever happened there. Hey, you made it to the end. What a crazy ride, right? Sadly, the cult still seems to hold great power to this day in Korea, as even the current president supports them, because otherwise the Megalina movement would dethrone him. It seems like these feminist cults are being used as foot soldiers to keep Korean politics and society in check, to make sure that everything follows the ideas of those who rule the land. An essential point about Korea is that pornography is illegal over there. That is why K-pop girls are so successful, because men have no other legal sources for sexy Korean girls. Maybe this also explains to a certain degree how all those feminist movements could grow so big over there. And now, as promised, my very own interpretation of the story. Using MKUltra terminology, Park is the slave or the asset, and the cult leader's daughter is her handler. It is likely that there are multiple personalities present in Park's body, as in every MKUltra slave. I suggest at least one dark cult personality, and one peaceful so-called front personality for the public eye. Maybe the Korean Rasputin managed to split her into two after her mother died, as it was for sure a highly traumatic experience for her. Park was never married, had no man on her side. It is very likely that the cult purposely isolated her from all possible outside interference, kept her as lonely as possible. Maybe they even managed to turn Park's mind into a childlike state, as to even better be able to control her. Because children are easier to control. That would at least explain why the president admitted to all the allegations. Because normally no politician ever admits to anything. Maybe her childlike front persona received the news of the accusations that she's a cult puppet and did the right thing of sincerely apologizing to the public. That would also explain the lines like, "There are even rumors that I am embedded in a cult," or that shamanistic rituals are being practiced inside the Geun-hye, the Korean equivalent of the White House. I would like to say that this is not at all true. It is possible that her front persona never took part in the dark activities, as that was the dark persona's field of action. So she, the front persona, really spoke the truth at the press conference. The other indicator that this story might be true is that her handler, the cult leader's daughter, was in Germany when Park held the initial apology speech. So she was not there to reprogram the president. The president's handler fucked up big time. A video on the topic of MKUltra and the possible splitting of personalities with massive trauma in order to create an asset/slave is already in the works. So please subscribe to my channel to not miss it. I will link it in the description when it's released. Or maybe, if we consider some crazy things, maybe it all went down like this. The most famous split personalities we know are characters like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and in our modern times, the Incredible Hulk and Bruce Banner. In both cases, there are two opposing forces residing in one body. Maybe this was also the case in President Park. And maybe this time her good side won the internal power struggle and managed to arrange a press conference to end the madness that was her cult-dominated life. Or maybe, let's go all Hollywood for a moment now, maybe the son or the grandson of the man who assassinated Park's father a long time ago, the head of the Korean CIA, you remember? Maybe he built up a hidden secret task force of trustworthy men who waited for an opening to walk in and deprogram President Park. When the president's handler escaped to Germany, they knew that they had to strike quickly. They gave the tablet to the fashion man, who claimed that he had discovered it on his own. They then walked in on the president and protected her from all the cult reprogramming attempts, while trying to strengthen whatever good was left in her. Maybe they even had to fight off some cult assassins. Anyway, keep in mind, good guys don't brag. If any force of good was involved in what happened in Korea back then, that force would not host a press conference on CNN. Instead, they would remain hidden from the public eye, as doing the good thing is reward enough. While researching for this video, I stumbled twice upon the number 666. Once here in the 4chan archives, and then in a Korean website as an ad for a magazine. Make of that what you want. The amount of death, accidents, and suicides is incredible. The deeper I dig, the more dead bodies I find. By a total accident, I stumbled upon this 4chan thread. Korea, 1,400 buried corpses are uncovered in a land owned by a cult. Spoiler, it's the same cult that owned the president. The sad part about this story is that the police started an investigation into this place 2 years ago. But they silently retracted everything without even writing a single report. So the police were either on it or they got scared off. On top of all, the area this illegal graveyard was in was apparently an UNESCO World Heritage Site. And all the links of that thread were already dead. The original website that first broke this news in English, allkpop.com, is still up, but they have deleted all political content, as all related search inquiries showed no results at all. The Wayback Machine at least showed up the linked article. According to that article, the press had obtained a list that showed who was buried where, all but for 40 graves that are to this day unidentified. The local people were shocked that their police knew about this, but did nothing. This whole event got deleted from the English internet, except for this small Japanese site here. Thank God for the 4chan archives, as it's currently the only place on the English internet that even mentioned this. Let us shine the light on these things, so that the dead can finally rest in peace. Now, with each massive story like this one, the overall picture becomes clearer and clearer. There's hard evidence for governments being controlled by cults, like here this story of Korean Rasputin. There are also cases of countries being controlled by Freemasonic lodges. The Propaganda Due, or short P2 lodge in Italy. Here an excerpt from Wikipedia. P2 was sometimes referred to as a state within a state, or a shadow government. The lodge had amongst its members prominent journalists, members of parliament, industrials, and military leaders, including Silvio Berlusconi, who later became Prime Minister of Italy, the Savoy pretender to the Italian throne Victor Emmanuel, and the heads of all 3 Italian intelligence services. Then we have cases like Epstein and Marc Dutroux, directly linking pizza and hot dogs to the most famous and influential people on earth. All these things were considered as the most unlikely of conspiracy theories out there, but they have been proven to be true. The same as the NSA is listening to every phone call and reading every email story, proven by Snowden. The only thing that is missing now is politicians confessing to performing sacrifices to the dark gods. But wait, we got that too, with that Hillary Clinton leaked email where she promises to sacrifice a chicken to Moloch if the one thing succeeds. Conclusion: we should take back our own power, as all institutions have been corrupted highly and cannot be trusted. Maybe it happened in the last decades, or perhaps this was always the case, but we were blind to see. Or our grandparents were easier to fool. Either way, it is up to us now to create our favorite version of our future. Say no to all the things you disagree with, be it small or large, as every action sets forth ripple waves of positive change. For now, if we truly want to change the world to a better, there still is no single universal plan for everyone to follow. And maybe there never will be one. Or perhaps one is not even needed at all. If we all do our best to become our best versions, if we face our shadow side and deal with all the shit we have been postponing and drowning in alcohol, if we all became the best versions of ourselves, maybe that's already enough to push the world into a direction of the awesome, glorious future we all deserve. A future with free energy devices, flying cars, healthy food, truly healing medicine, great movies, and the most funny of memes. Which I will still of course present you on my channel. There's only little separating us from that future, as humanity has a way to let some things go viral once they reach a certain threshold. A future that is just waiting around the corner for us. So go forth now and do your homework, and become the best you can be. Be the lighthouse for those around you. Vital Red Pill out.